workshop to order. And first up, discussion regarding the fiscal year 2022-2023 year-end financial report. Hold on just a little bit longer. All right, I think we're ready to go now.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. We want to take a quick look at some of the highlights from FY23, and that's what we'll keep. If you do have questions, please stop me at any time, and I'll probably say this more than once. It's one thing to look at numbers, but what we also want to make sure we translate to you or try to provide you is perspective. What do the numbers mean? But probably as important, more important, is what do we need to do as a result of our financial performance last year, going into next year and into the future. So that's really our goal this evening. What I will do is I'm going to go through the narrative, which is the very first portion of your booklet. I'll hit on the high spots of that, and certainly we have to answer any questions or follow up on any questions that you might have. I think what we start out with was that we did have a good year. It was fiscally sound. We did end up having about a $300,000 surplus, which was less than 1% of our net operating budget. So it was actually very close. And the one thing that we also want to emphasize to you is that we had some help along the way. We had a number of cases of unbudgeted, unanticipated revenue that helped us maintain that level. It's not that we could not have made budget, but we did not have to rely on transfers and use of fund balance that was already budgeted. We're going to go into that probably in a little more detail here in just a second. Some of the unanticipated, unbudgeted revenue were grant funds in the animal shelter, right-of-way purchase from Tech Stock, you may recall, on South 281. Attorney fee reimbursement from Central Texas Water Supply Corp, heavy equipment lease buyout, and interest. We'll spend a little bit of time going over interest specifically. But the first thing I want to do, I remember this conversation each year we always talk about transfers and use of fund balance, and we try to explain to council each year that transfers are budgeted, use of fund balance is budgeted, but sometimes if we're short on our revenue projections for those funds, it's because we don't need them, and that's a good thing. So we want to, I kind of captured all of the accounts where we showed budgeted income and then actually what we brought in, and then what, for example, in this slide shows you, this is in your book, but it's easier probably to read on the screen. So if you take a look at the first set of numbers, those are all income numbers, undesignated retained earnings, other sources, that's basically fund balance. We're pulling that from fund balance as an income item. Transfers to other departments or other funds, that shows it's transferred from where it comes from and where it goes to in the account line. The far right column kind of paints the picture for you of the budgeted revenue we had for transfers and use of fund balance. We actually didn't use, or there was unrealized revenue of almost $3.5 million. So that's money that either stayed within that home fund, for example, electric, or stayed in fund balance. And we'll go through some of the reasons and give you a couple of examples of what situations exist that would make us not need to use those funds. And then the same thing on the expense side. If you look down below, we have a number of, 5 of those accounts, or 4 of those accounts are 81, Fund 81, that's electric, so that's transfers out of electric. Well, we budgeted the numbers in the middle column, what our actual was, and we ended up not having to transfer almost $980,000. So that remained in this example, in the aviation fund and the electric fund. So savings from unnecessary transfer expense was about $980,000. Going back up to the income set of numbers, about $2.5 million was budgeted out of fund balance, and about $920,000 was budgeted as transferred revenue into typically in general and other departments. So why does this happen? We just want to paint this picture up front so you can understand, even though, had we made all those transfers, our bottom line might have looked better, but if you have a higher surplus, those funds all go back to fund balance anyway. So we want to try to paint a picture. Yes, we had a sound year, we had some unanticipated revenue, but we also had a lot of transfers. We didn't have to rely on transfers and use of fund balance as much as we needed to. Some of it because we didn't have anything to spend the money on. And I'm going to also give you an example here. This is the golf course fund. And this is, I forgot what page it is, but you have a set of numbers in the second tab. And golf course is page 38, so that's included in your book, and you can look up any of the other departments within that next set of numbers. But I just wanted to show you this example. Golf course had a heck of a year. If you look at the second column of numbers up in the income line, FY 2023 fourth quarter actual, and you go down that column to that transfers line, 4,900 is the major account line. Actually, we needed about $24,000 worth of transfers to balance that golf course budget, actually. Take a look over to the right, 23 budget, what we actually budgeted was $246,000. Why was that? Well, if you look up to that top line of service revenue, it had a heck of a year. On a plan of $550,000 in service revenue, they actually brought in $722,000. Good year. So that paints the picture and provides you the example of we didn't need to pull funds from one fund to another to balance that budget because they performed well. And likewise on the income expense side, not only did they did that service revenue It was $170,000 better than planned, but overall, it was $46,000 under expense on the expense line. And that's that number in the variance to budget. So does that kind of paint a picture of this one example of why transfers were not needed? Because really that particular fund performed well, the golf fund performed well. I think the other example that I put in the narrative was the example on police cars, which you actually have a corresponding agenda item about, as well as the fire engine. Okay, we have $947,000 for the engine that was budgeted. Remember, we've been putting money back into fund balance. Well, we were going to use that fund balance to go ahead and pay that bill. We didn't have to pull it. We will at some point, but at least in this fiscal year, we didn't pull that money out of fund balance, nor did we have a corresponding expense for the engine in FY23. I just wanted, it seems like last year, maybe a few years, maybe it's every year, I just wanted to make sure that people understood the transfer revenue, transfer expense, and use of fund balance. It's there to be used. In fact, I think it's irresponsible not to use it, particularly if it gets to certain levels. And I think House has been good stewards of maintaining fund balance and using it and building it for different items. The other thing that really was a great surprise to us, and we talk about unbudgeted, unanticipated revenue. When we started looking at our revenue, even I don't know when we started saying this, but you know, we went from basically a 0.3 to a 0.5%. It was less than 0.5% that we were earning on our money, and we've gone up now to 5.5. The investment report is also part of the financial report, so I'll refer to that, but on the order of 5 to 5.5%. So what does that do? Well, that means last year when you brought in $57,000 in interest income, and we budgeted probably a little more conservatively than we should have, $17,000, but we actually made $468,000 in interest income in FY23. Just also to know, that interest typically stays within that fund. And particularly if you earn interest on any of your certificate of obligation dollars, that has to stay with those CO projects. And as we learned in the 2016 issuance, basically the interest we earned, even though it was not as great, but basically interest we earned paid for another restroom in the park. So that's a good thing. Also wanted to talk just a little bit before we'll get into a little bit more specific on the income and expense, but we want to talk just a little bit as well about some environmental influences. And these are just weather events that impacted our FY23 budget. First was, and I'd almost forgotten about this until I saw that we had like $81,000 or $85,000 in unbudgeted insurance proceeds. Like, oh yeah, that hailstorm we had in November, I think it was Veterans Day. And we also see that very clearly reflected on the number of permits we had issued. We issued 335 permits for roofs. Not huge dollars, but it's kind of interesting the way that, and of course, the major event of last year was drought and extreme heat, which impacted, I believe, our cost of water, operating and maintenance expense on water, as well as benefited us to a certain extent on electric sales. So those are items that we want to reference as having an impact as well. I also want to, and I'll remind us when we talk about income and expense, but the biggest number in your budget is your electric department. And the diligence that council has shown on that and the decisions you've made, I think, have been very prudent and have recognized that we wanted to not have an unnecessary burden on our ratepayers. But we certainly did notice in FY23 the increased congestion, transmission costs certainly impacted our margins. The council did also make the decision to renegotiate a purchase power agreement in October 23 that should reduce somewhat of those variable costs that we're seeing. And right now the electric market is not settled yet, but certainly that was also something that played into our financial performance for FY23. Also, just want to mention a little bit about project funding. This will, I think what I want to come away with is there's probably a couple of messages I'd like to give council, or I think these numbers represent. One of them does relate to project funding. We do have funds, not only that we budget out of operating, but we also have funds that are available, and we really don't include them in our operating budget, but council designates what we do with those funds, and those are ARPA funds, the CARES Act fund, which we still have a very healthy balance in, $950,000. And then also on the 2022 COs, we still have probably the majority of those funds still intact. About $3 million we had earmarked for wastewater improvements at the sewer plant. As we all know, that's still in study and in negotiation with Ajinomoto Foods. Not necessarily to do their work, but to also capitalize on work that we could do at the same time that would benefit our entire system. So project funding, we still have a fair amount. Those projects we have somewhat identified. We did spend some funding out of ARPA in FY23, including sewer extensions in the business park, about $200,000, and that was just in FY23. I think we spent the majority of that prior to FY23, as well as utility relocation on South 281. Utility rates, we did see an increase in water and electric, and that was based on the cost of raw water from the Brazos River Authority, increased debt load on the water department. And on the electric side, again, it was for some of the changes we were seeing in the market. The one thing that I think we need to study very closely, all of our utilities, but also wastewater, that rate has not been adjusted since 2018, and I think it's safe to say that our costs, we need to do a better job of delivering council information on the cost of service so that we can make decisions one way or the other. And regardless of the decision, we want to make sure council goes in with their eyes open in terms of any of those types of decisions around utility rates. Just a couple of bookkeeping items, timely disclaimers. These are put together prior to auditor's adjustment. Those are typically, auditor's adjustments are typically where they take capitalized expenses and then convert them to appreciation. But there are sometimes some other things. But what we try to take a look at is the same thing from year to year. So these sets of numbers, when Yvonne finalizes them, I print them out, we start looking at them, and we compare them to the same set of numbers at the same time that we received last year. So this gives you a good idea of what you budgeted, what you saw during the budget process, and then how we performed against that. The summary of performance, I think, again, the message I think we want to deliver to council is we want to emphasize the importance of assessment of utility costs and rates in addition to continued investment in infrastructure, roads, and drainage. I think we need to be more aggressive on our capital projects if we can, but it's tough getting stuff. Parts here, materials here, design done. So there are a lot of things that make it a little more challenging. The numbers for FY23, again, you finished up on the next to the last column, variance to budget. You finished up about $300,000 better to plan. That is about $416,000 worse than your net last year. So if you go back all the way to the left-hand column of numbers, that's your 22 fourth quarter actual. And so it was a good year, but again, I think we had a little help along the way in terms of some unanticipated and unbudgeted revenue. I want to start talking a little bit about revenue. This is all of your operating funds rolled up. So that number expanded to all the major accounts. Show the same thing. You finished $300,000. But again, we're going to focus first on the income set of numbers, top set of numbers. And how this is organized is these are done by major account. If you want a set of financials by minor account, please let me know. Or if you have specific questions about, for example, what is in licenses and fees, $4,100? What makes up court revenue, $4,200? One of the things that, and there's some quirks in these major accounts. We actually book a lot of our credit card fees in court revenue. That's just where that account is. And so there's some things that we can kind of flush out if you have some specific questions. The biggest number on the revenue side is $4,800 other revenue, and you can see that makes up about 70%, 69, 70% of your total revenue budget. That includes, other revenue includes where we take fund balance from. It includes utility payments. It includes, for example, in the police department, we now have a significant amount of income from the county and the school district, SROs and dispatch. And so a lot of those funds are shown up in other revenue. So it's a big number because there's a lot of big things in it. We have done these graphs, and these are done by use rather than major account, just to point out a few things to you. One is the fact that your income for your entire city is about 42% electric. If you look at all the utilities, water, sewer, electric, about 58% of your revenue, it comes from those three areas. The other thing that this seems to have stayed the same kind of year in, year out. It seemed like last year our property and sales tax was maybe 12 to 13%. Our revenue from property tax is about 4% of your revenue budget. Our revenue from sales tax is about 7% of your total budget. Frank gets a 0% for permitting. That's the impact. Although there's some good indicators from permitting information that kind of says tells us what's going on with our local economy. I think it's important. Tax revenue. Talk a little bit about sales tax. I think we've all been kind of seeing and hearing, hey, we're flat. It's little gain little loss this year, and it's a future slide, but if you can read that small print at the top, it says sales tax, that's since 2017. If you look at FY22 actual versus FY23 actual, we actually had about 4.3, 4.4% increase in sales tax. So somehow we kind of creeped along and had a couple of good months that offset some of the other ones, or maybe where we had good months, we actually had greater revenue. Where we had a bad month, the revenue wasn't as high. We'll come back to this in just a second. I think in other revenue is the biggest number. If we look back at this slide and you follow other revenue across, you can see other revenue, the very second to the last variance to budget. We were about 565,000 unrealized in our revenue on other, which is, we don't want to be $500,000 off of revenue budget. However, to put it in perspective, we also know that about $2.5 million was budgeted in other revenue from fund balance that we did not need. So we had other departments, other funds that performed well, including animal shelter, where they had the grant funds of about in excess of $94,000. Golf, as we talked about, electric was about $780,000 better in other revenue, but that did include about $360,000 in reimbursed substation upgrades. I don't know if council remembers, LCRA did upgrades to the substation. At that same time, they had to do things to upgrade our side of the substation controls, but they reimbursed us for that. They said, you know, we need to keep a clean sheet, clean documentation. You take care of it, we'll pay you back for it. And there are corresponding expenses related to that, but that's included in that other revenue. And about $250,000 in interest income. Water was better, about not quite $60,000, but please keep in mind that about $68,000 was included in other revenue from attorney fee reimbursement from Central Texas. We also saw about $170,000 in the wastewater plant from Athens surcharges in FY23. I think the next set of numbers we talk about utility sales. Really, electric was good. Water was close to plan, actually closer than I thought it would be based on the conservation. But wastewater was about, sales were about $126,000 off plan, about $48,000 worse than previous year. So we do need to take a look not only at that, but also all those utilities. That's the biggest, like I said, it's the biggest number in our budget. We've got to have data drive decisions, and or at least we have to have the information, and so that we can go in with open eyes on any decision we ask council for. On the expense side, again, we're about $1 million under expense. And if you look back at this slide, if you go to variance to budget, go to the expense set at $1.03 million in parentheses. That's the amount we were under expense. Again, just to take a look at this pie chart, very similar. You've got about 59% of your city expenses in those three utility departments: water, sewer, electric. We also tried to give you a taste or perspective in terms of what the other expense items were. Safety and permitting, 17%. That is fire, police, animal shelter, building permitting. Life and culture, that is takes up about 8% of your budget. That's parks, library, golf course. Got what else we put in there, but it gives you an idea about of that pie or of your expenses. That's what it costs, and that's the level of funding that you're seeing. We were overspending a fair amount in 5,200 supplies. Oops, lost my chart. 5,200 supplies. You can see that we're about not quite $1.3 million overspent. On a plan of $8.8 million, we spent $10 million. Again, I'm just going to 5,200 supplies and going across to fourth quarter actual, what our budget was and what the variance was. So we were overexpensed about $1.287 million in that. And that's related basically to the cost of electricity, as well as increases in water supply expense. Those are items that where we did pick up some revenue, the expenses grew to that extent. So something we want to make sure we take a closer look at. Capital expense, that was under expense by about $1.4 million, and that can be directly relatable. There are a few other odds and ends, but we had about $242,000 budgeted, but was unable to be spent due to delayed delivery of control units, and about $947,000 due to delayed delivery in the fire department apparatus. The other things that are also included in here is I like to just give you some indication or some other statistics of what the activity has been in. For example, sales tax, and we go back to 2017, property tax, building planning fees, mixed drink tax. And so this is a minuscule portion of our budget. But I also think it gives you some perspective of what's going on, particularly in this last year where you see sales tax over the last 7 years got an average annual increase of 10.8%. Property tax 3.3%. Building planning fees 16.8%, but lion's share of that was because we had such a busy 2023. Mixed drink tax. We're getting thirstier, and I think businesses are doing better. A lot of that's related to 2019, the local option election that was held then, as well as we annexed Butters and Gutters at that time in 2019. Hot fund revenue, about 11% average increase, and again, you can really see the dip during COVID, and it comes back up. You also have other, the very last sheet, in the very last tab, if you wanted to take a look at some of the hot fund revenue as well as expense, that's included in your packet. Permits issued, you can see FY22 we issued 602, FY23 1,098. So that is directly related to the 335 permits we issued for roofs. Customer increase, and these really aren't customers, these are services. So we've seen some moderate growth in water and all of our utility. I didn't want to take up a lot of your time. I don't want to bore you, but we certainly want to make sure you have all the information that you would like, and we're certainly available to answer any other questions. I think the message is that we need to be focused on utility cost of service as it relates to rates, including capital forecasts. We should be aggressive in implementing additional capital improvements, particularly where funding exists. I could stand up here for a long time and talk to you about different things, and would be happy to answer any questions you have. I appreciate the work of Yvonne and her team, Becky helping put the packages up and put it together. But you're in good shape. You got money in the bank. There's some things that we're going to have to give some attention to, but all in all, the city staff and certainly elected officials performed well in FY23. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Finley. Number 3, discussion regarding the memorandum of understanding for hiking bike trails at 580 Sports Complex.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Give you a quick background on what's going on out there at 580 Sports Park with the trails. Actually met with Shannon, I guess it was I believe it was last Thursday or Wednesday, but we went out, collected a piece of the trail that they've got upgraded. So there's about 4 miles now of the total 8 miles that they were, potentially wanting to finish out. Look pretty good. I'm not a Himmler or mountain bike guru, so, walking the trails, I got my exercise, I was out of breath. Shannon, if you've ever met Shannon, that guy's in really good shape, and it was hard to keep up with him, but we've made a lot of progress too as far as the MOU. I know last time we came to council, there were some concerns that Lampasas Trails, the 501c, had with the way we had structured it, and some of those things were putting some burden on to them for project management and maybe some requirements that we went back and took a look at that aren't really relative for this type of project. And so we made some of those changes. But one thing that I would point out, I think that was really the sticking point for Lampasas Trails that we really tried to kind of come to the table on and make sure we're honoring the effort they put, in out there while allowing, the public to use everything and keeping that as the priority. So I'll just point your attention to page 11. Item number 3 was really the piece that it kind of defines that. And so non-interference and protection of improved trails. The city acknowledges the trail system constructed by Lampasas Trails and volunteers and contractors in accordance with IMBA standards may not be altered, changed, rerouted without the express cooperation of the parties. If an immediate safety condition exists as determined by the city, the trail system may be altered or rerouted with the parties to consult regarding the mitigation and safety condition within 48 hours of alteration. The parties acknowledge that the areas outside of the trail system may be used for other public and recreational purposes. However, the city will notify Lampasas Trails of any proposed new project uses that will be in the area of the park where the approved trails exist, allowing Lampasas Trails an opportunity to provide input before the city approves such project. So that was really the last piece that we kind of set down on the table. Also, if you'll look at sheet, I guess it's 14, but I don't see a number. That's the actual exhibit I pointed out. This is originally what they proposed, so what's in our GIS system is originally what's proposed. The piece that's the 4 miles, basically, as you come in to the north, I guess that would be the northeast side, those trails are done and they kind of wrap around to the south, a little bit past Midway's right now, and kind of that bottom area below the rodeo arena. The west side is what's still lacking to be finished. So there's really, I believe, 2 loops, and they're calling that front part right as you enter the 3rd loop, kind of a practice loop up front by the parking area. You can kind of see it goes north and kind of winds around where you can stay in different areas.
All right, can I ask a question real quick? On that B3, we went into a second ago, it says the parties acknowledge the areas outside the trail system may be used for other public and recreation purposes. The disc golf course is going to go through those trails, right?
I think the intent is to allow, as long as we can do it safely, that was the whole goal. I don't know that there's a way that you could miss all the trails with the disc golf, so again, it's going to be one of those things that we'll get input. We'll make sure, if the disc golfers decide, hey, there's a hole here, that there's clearance, it's safe, where you can throw across before. And I think really that was the big ask, from Lampasas Trails.
I just hate to agree to something that includes that other group from being involved.
Right. Yeah, we definitely don't want to exclude them. I think that's the major piece of trying to, work through this MOU is to make sure all the public and all the different groups can have access. It's hard to say right now because they're not done. The last time we met with the disc golfers, kind of their direction was, well, let's see how it lays out and we'll go out there and try to make sure we can fit things in. I'm still hopeful that that's the case. Obviously, there's quite a few trails there in 8 miles, so it's going to take some work to fit it in.
Right. In regards to the same B3, if an immediate safety condition exists as determined by the city, trail system may be altered, so on and so forth. Is that defined? How do we determine an immediate, I'm not an expert, you're not an expert, how do we determine what an immediate safety concern is? And who's going to make that determination on, we need to close this part of the trail today?
Right. I think that's a great question, and I think that's really a partnership. Of course, we have a team that's out there at 580. Now, obviously, they're not going to go down, every mountain bike trail every day to check that. So we will rely a lot on Lampasas Trails to do that, and then to report back to us. Structured through here, that was basically the intent. If you look at their section, which is section A, is if they come across something that they're not able, or it truly is a safety matter that they can't address, then they need to let the city know as soon as possible so that we can address it. My thought is, and again, I'm not a mountain bike guy either, but looking at what they've got, so that a lot of the little kind of rollover hills, they're built, they're built with, materials that are out there. So like a couple stacked logs, and they put dirt over the top and they compact that. Those types of things I would foresee is over time we need to kind of stay on top of that, to not cause it. I mean, if the log's showing, we're going to need to put more dirt on it. Things like that. I think as far as the trails go themselves, it's mainly keeping keeping them open from debris and brush and stuff, I think is gonna be your biggest ongoing kind of maintenance thing.
Do they have a current maintenance plan?
I think my understanding is from what they've shared with me is, they intend to continue on, I think one of the goals is that a perpetual, you have them perpetually maintain something. I think there's gonna be times when we need to help, but the intent is, and they've stressed that they intend to, keep the trails clear and keep them maintained, so.
Where here does it give a provision for us to exit this MOU if Lampasas Trails never keeps up with any of the repairs or maintenance?
I believe, if you look at, I believe D covers, some of that as far as basically the agreement is that either party, should they decide to no longer, be in this memorandum of understanding, then you have 30-day notice. Either way, either party could submit that and say, these are the reasons why, and, at that time we can address it.
Anybody else have any questions? All good.
Thank you. I believe our intent is to bring this back and bring it back hopefully next council with it finalized, ready to go for y'all's approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion regarding any items on the regular agenda. All good? At that time, we'll adjourn the workshop session. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn, workshop session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Need a break? 5-10 minute break? Yes, good. All right. We will call our regular session to order.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you so grateful tonight for such a great group of people and such a great community. We ask that you be with us and help us to do our best, taking this information, pass it around, and make some good decisions for the betterment of your whole community and all of our visitors. We're especially grateful for the gentle rains that came last week. And we pray that if you could see it in your schedule to send us a little more, we'd sure appreciate it. We ask that you be with us tonight, forgive us our sins, be with us in safety till we can meet again. And as always, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Go ahead and play. Pledge allegiance
To the flag
of
the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to these Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Got a couple of swearing in ceremony. Officer Jonathan Reinhardt.
Good. Let's get right over here. All right. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Jonathan Reinhardt,
I, Jonathan Reinhardt,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the office of Lampasas Police Officer
of the office of Lampasas Police Officer
and will, to the best of my ability,
and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state.
so help me God. Well,
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just take a few seconds to tell you a little bit about Officer Reinhardt. We're excited to have him. Officer Reinhardt comes to us about the middle of January. Comes to us with 20 years of experience in law enforcement. He's a master peace officer. Prior to working for us, Officer Reinhardt worked as a patrol deputy with the Lampasas County Sheriff's Office for approximately 3 years. And prior to that, Killeen Police Department were promoted to the rank of sergeant over 17 years. Currently, John is working with our field training officer. He doesn't really need to be trained to be a police officer, but we do have some policies and procedures that are a little different than what he's used to, so they're going through that. Should be out on the road here in a week or two, protecting our community. I think our department and our community are safer for having Officer Reinhardt on our staff.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank y'all.
Chief, y'all do any pictures? Thank you, Chief, get pictures. Got them? Good. All right, good y'all.
Public hearing, citizens comment, any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The city council may not deliberate on items presented under agenda item, and there is none. Citizens comment, any citizen who desires to address the city council on matters that is included in this agenda may do so at this time, and there is none. Discussion and possible actions concerning the approval of minutes of the regular meetings held on January 22nd, 2024.
Nancy, any corrections, recommend approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Consent agenda, discussion and possible action regarding purchases and charges in excess of $4,000 from January 1st, 2024, January 31st, 2024. Discussion and possible action regarding December 2023 investment report.
Nancy, any corrections, again, recommend approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Boards and department report. Mayor and Council, just a few brief comments. Wanted to follow, meant to put this on the previous agenda, but I wanted to let you know how we fared in mid-January freezing conditions that we had. And I guess after a couple of years, we figured it out after Winter Storm Uri. But so really, we've had no appreciable damage in any of our restrooms, pump houses, irrigation controls. We did do a fair amount of insulation, some electric, added some outlets, for example, in some of the park restrooms, et cetera. So it's paid off. We did have a few spigots that we needed to repair, but all in all, fared very well. Staff did a good job. Water, just a couple of things to touch on, and also I want to mention something on the water study that council has engaged Jones Healy on. As of last week, and I didn't get a chance to call Lee today, but as of last week, they were standing by with divers to install 2 of their deeper raw water pumps at the Lake Cliff plant. At least seemed to feel like once those were installed, that capacity would go up to probably plus or minus 10 million gallons a day, which would be more than adequate to not only serve us, but the other water systems that he serves out of that plant. We will report back to you on that. That's good news. We do. During the period of repair, we did extend the emergency water contract, although the amount of water that we take from Kempner has been reduced quite a bit, particularly since they had the floating barge and were able to get Lake Cliff back up and going. The lake levels still remain at a pretty critical level. In my estimation, we're below 605 before this last rain. I didn't check it today, but really, I think the target ought to be about 620, 650 to 620 in April. And that gives us, I think, a good chance of getting through the summer. But that's a lot of feet to come up with really the conditions that we've had. You would have thought it would come up more than what it has, but so that's we're certainly concerned about that, keeping a close eye on it. Although certainly the water treatment folks to the east are doing better than we're at as of October. One thing we do want to touch base with council on, both Central Texas and Kentner are reverting to stage 2 water conservation. And we'd like to do the same, providing there's no objection from council. Very good, we'll proceed. Water study, we did meet with Jones Heroy about the water alternate and supplemental study that they were doing, the investigation. And really some good progress has been made. He has delivered us the preliminary groundwater report, which identifies possible aquifers of adequate capacity and quality. Additionally, he has initiated some sampling along Sulphur Creek, as well as done checked the flow, and he did that, I think, at a good time. It was before we got into any of the real kind of wet and cooler temperatures, so hopefully it's representative of a low flow conditions on Sulphur Creek. Did come up with a 1963 study, and I put this in my report just because I think it's neat. It's a great report. It's about 8 pages long. It's concise, it's direct, it's informative, and it validates a lot of the things we think about what's going on in Sulphur Creek, and as that also relates to Lampasas River. So I think that's also a validation of the work that Jason's doing and the digging he's coming up with to try to give us a good study. I think what we'll do is give Mr. Jones a little more time, and perhaps in the March, April timeframe, we'll invite him to a council meeting to review the progress at that point. Meeting dates. Earlier this month, staff provided council through email about some possible meeting dates. These would be evening. The two groups that we're trying to coordinate with are Kentner Water Supply Corporation and the Lampasas Economic Development Corporation. We've thrown out some different dates, February 19, 22, that off Monday sometimes has worked well for previous councils, so if there's a date, it'd be nice to be able to give these entities 2 or 3 dates, and you can certainly contact me by email if you'd like to say, hey, these dates work great, this one doesn't. I do know that we have a scheduled city council meeting on the 26th, and Kentner has a scheduled meeting on the 28th, but Bruce reminded me of that, although sometimes it's tough to have this type of meeting in addition to your regular business meeting, but certainly interested in getting that put to bed, or at least try and get those meetings scheduled. The other thing we're trying to do is, and I apologize to Council Member Hernandez, I meant to get this done prior to this meeting, but we do want to try to set up a really kind of a smaller, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but even if it's a 6 to 8 person meeting with some council folks, maybe with some staff, and maybe with a somewhat informal agenda, trying to just talk about, hey, what's working for you, what's not working for you, and do that over the noon hour. If you want to be a part of that, let me know, and we'll try to coordinate a meeting, but that's my thought. Did you have any additional thoughts on that, council member?
Yeah, kind of the initial idea I had is to get key developers and the city, around the city together to learn how to work with staff, particularly our infrastructure staff. Just learn how to mesh with each other and make Lampasas work, make Lampasas a place where developers want to land. That's not an idea.
And And I think we've certainly seen what infrastructure can do. I mean, it's 281 corridor probably wouldn't have built out unless we had run that line to the school, or certainly wouldn't have grown out as quickly as it has. So, absolutely. We'll try to set something up in the next couple of weeks. That's enough. I'll work with you on that in terms of the list of posts I was considering. Any comment on dates or anything that just absolutely doesn't work for you at this point on any of the other dates? Or you can email me too. You don't necessarily have to count it out.
22nd in February and April 1st are kind of hard for me.
Okay. Mayor, I'll proceed, and we can come back to it if you like, council.
I guess pretty much any Monday I'd be good, but the other days,
Not so good.
bad. Maybe.
Okay, Monday's better. We'll kind of work in that direction. Audit, it sounds like our auditors will be ready to present and go over the draft audit on March 15th. Typically, we do that in a committee made up of the mayor pro tem, and one additional council member. And I thought we had mentioned this before, and maybe we even, I don't think we've identified another council member to sit in on this, but if we have, please let me know, because maybe my memory isn't working so well, but.
I'd like to be a part of that if I can.
Okay. We'll put you on the list. Probably do it about 10:30 in the morning if that will work for you on the 15th. Okay. We'll confirm, but thank you very much, and can't make it.
I mean, Fort Bell County, that one.
Okay. Mayor, we could have another person sit in Mayor Pro Tem's, or if you wanted to reschedule Mayor Pro Tem, we could. Yeah, Chuck, did you?
Yeah.
Is that spring break coming up?
Oh, it is.
Well, I'm out.
I didn't realize.
My real boss has already got me somewhere else.
I didn't know that. I'll have to get my things in and see.
We'll get with the auditor and we'll coordinate maybe by email then, if that's all right, Mayor. Okay, fire department. Today, members of the fire department were in Houston. Reviewed preparations for the new engine. I also took some tools and accessories down there for the make ready phase. And staff understanding the assembly should be ready for delivery in mid to late March. I'd also like to report that Joe Adams has been named interim chief of the department. Bart Baker has been named interim fire marshal. And I think and those of you that have been here while I've been here, you know that I've utilized interim positions pretty frequently to take a breath, to see what's going on, to try to make sure that the organization, that we can really assess the qualities of the person we want to hire. And I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a little bit of time to provide the opportunity to work with leadership and rank and file, to take a look at the organizational structure and the delivery of services, get some input and buy-in from the members of the department as we move forward. I think probably that phase is anywhere from 30 days to 60 days, something like that. So we're excited about what's going on down there, and I think Joe's going to provide a very good leadership. Eclipse, we continue preparation for the April 8th eclipse. We are moving forward on final specific deployment of staff and resources and going to be documenting that. We have also had some site visits from vendors that will be providing resources to us. Road closure plans are being coordinated with TxDOT. Business meetings continue that Stacy and Melissa have been spearheading. We're also looking at public communication efforts, including postcards, window bills, and possibly I'm not saying that this is what we should do, but somebody should do some sort of commemorative poster, because we wouldn't want a Lampasas Eclipse poster on their wall for April 8th, 2024. We do have some current reservation numbers. They are pretty low, but I will tell you this. I can see a ramp up in calls and inquiries, correct? Yeah, it is starting to ramp up a fair amount. And W.N. Brooks Park 20, 580 RV 19, 580 1033. So those aren't the numbers we expect, but like I said, this is beginning to really ramp up at this stage. If you have to answer any
You
questions.
said what the numbers were again, I didn't hear.
Yes, sir. W.N. Brook Park 20, 580 RV sites 19, 580 1033. It seems like we get several emails a day about where do I go, where do I park, what can I do, how do I make a reservation, that sort of thing. Any other items coming across?
And the next town hall is in March, I believe.
March. Jody, you remember? It's the third or fourth week in March, I believe. Does the 27th sound right, Jody?
I have the
22nd?
27th.
27th? I got really lucky if that's the date.
That's the date I have on my calendar.
Okay. I believe this is 27th, we'll confirm. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll go down to new business 7.1, discussion and selection of website photo contest winner.
Mayor and City Council, there were 2 photo entries for the month of January.
Make a motion on engineer one.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. 7.2, discussion and possible action regarding first reading of ordinance calling the May 4th, 2024 general election for the city of Lampasas to elect the expired term of the council member places 3, 4, 5, providing for early voting, polling times and places in bilingual election material.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the next step in our getting ready for our election. We already have approved our joint agreements with the county and LSC. So this next step is just to go ahead and do the ordinance. We'll do the first reading this evening to go ahead and call the general election. And then one thing I do want to remind everybody that we'll only have one day of early voting till late hours this time, and that'll be on the 30th, where they'll have the 12-hour day. That's the only change this week this time. So at this time, I'm asking to consider a motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance calling for general election to elect expired terms of councilmember places 3, 4, and 5 to the city council of the city of Lampasas to be held on May 4th, providing for polling times and places, providing for early voting, and providing for bilingual election materials.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion and possible action regarding the approval of park trails paving by Hines Paving. Oh, 7.3, I'm sorry. Discussion and possible actions to issue order of election for municipalities for the May 4th, 2024 general election.
This is another document that's required by state, and with regarding to the document that you'll have in front of you, you'll have to all sign for me, just another piece of the order of election. So this one's asking to consider a motion to order the election to be held on May 4th, 2024, and realize that you need to sign off on this document the mayor has.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
Thank you very much.
you. Now, 7.4. Discussion and possible action regarding the approval of park trail paving by Hines Paving at Hancock Park Golf Course in the amount of $33,787.24.
Mayor, council, thank y'all for allowing me to be here tonight. I was excited to get here tonight. Of all the council meetings I've been to, this is my favorite one. Anyway, I want to announce, before I get into it, the new guy, my replacement, Christopher Moore is here. Stand up here.
Come on up.
Raise your hand. Oh, you're going up there? Okay. Anyway, just, I was gonna tell him a little about himself, but anyway, he hails from Lampasas. He's a graduate here. I don't remember when he graduated. I think 03, 04, something like that. He has a degree in thoroughbred management from TSTC in Waco. I don't even know if it's still called that. His first job was at the Country Club of Little Rock in Arkansas. I think he was there a couple of years. And then he went to Quartier Ranch in Bernie, which he was assistant there for 3 years. And then from there he went to the quarry in San Antonio, where he was an assistant there for about 3 years. And his last job was at Escondido in Horseshoe Bay, where he was a head superintendent there. So, anyways, he's got a lot of knowledge. I think he's going to do a great job. I have full faith in him. I think y'all chose well when you chose him out of that. Anyway, glad to have him. I think everybody's excited. 99% of the golfers know him, and they're all excited to have him. So, anyway, I just wanted to introduce him while I had the chance.
Glad to have you in Lampasas. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Okay, Mayor, Council, so this is our annual car trail paving program that we have. I have $17,500 budgeted. The Hancock Park Golf Association has agreed to contribute $15,000 toward that, for a grand total of $32,500. I think you can see my addition is wrong. I just noticed it sitting back there. The difference in Heinz paving was $33,787.24, and also paving was $32,300 for a difference of $14,87.24. My budget, like I said, is $32,500, which is $1,287 over budget. But with that being said, I do have money in some line items that I'm going to be okay on. My chemical and mechanical line item, Christian Act, and some of the guys actually said I went through their whole program, so we're going to have a little extra money left. But we're going to recommend awarding the bid to Heinz Paving in the amount of $33,787.24. So and he can start that as soon as possible.
Move to approve the car trail improvements, bid the car trail improvements in Heinz Paving in Burnt, Texas, for the amount of $33,787.24.
Second.
Any discussion?
What's the difference in the two bids?
The difference in the two bids is $1,487.24.
Well, I get that, but why do we choose more expensive than what I'm asking?
Heinz Paving has done it in the past. In fact, he did all the paving up until about 2 years ago. And the other company did not do a very good job at all.
So we've used it in the past?
Yes, I've used it in the last 2 years. Yes. That's what they did the first job. Some of it's already kind of not holding up like it should.
Okay.
And we've dealt with Heinz. I've dealt with them for years. They literally have done every car trail up there for the last 2 years.
So the last 2 years also are.
It's done the paving, yes.
A little bit more money on the front end, but save money on the back end. A little bit more money to them on the front end.
Yes, yes, because we're patching already patching the ones that were 2 years ago.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Seven point five, discussion and possible action regarding the purchase of bunker gear and helmets in the amount of $28,118.50 to complete 6 full sets for the Lampasas Fire Department.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Joe Evans is not able to make it tonight, so I thought I would stand in for him. If you'll see, they've got the quotes from the different companies. They have gone with NACO. They did get a grant for fire equipment and apparatus of $20,000. That will enable them to get 6 full sets of bunker gear for the firefighters, and the little overage that they will have. They do have bunker gear that is budgeted every year, so they will take that, plus part of it will come out of uniform. The reason we went ahead and did it tonight is there is an April 20th, I believe, deadline we have to use that money before the grant expires.
I have a motion. What's the total amount then, Yvonne, that we're gonna be emotional?
Well, 28,118.50, but 20,000 of that will be coming out of the grant funds. So we will be paying the 8,118.50 out of the two, out of bunker gear and out of uniforms, and that will leave him. That will take care of the bunker gear line item. It will zero it out, but he'll have about 5,000 left in uniform after. There is a spreadsheet, I believe, in the middle here that shows you the breakdown of everything and where the monies are coming from.
I make a motion to approve the purchase of the bunker gear and helmets.
Second.
Any more discussion? What was the budget amount?
The original budgeted amount in bunker gear, they had budgeted 11,000. We've already paid some of that money out of bunker gear for some boots and other bunker gear helmets that we've already paid.
8,118.50, that's within what's in budget.
That's within what's been budgeted, correct?
So do an amendment, a motion to make an amendment where the amount to be, no more than $8,200 on top of the grant.
That's fine.
I'll second it.
So we'll go back and fill the first one.
You need to take action on the amendment first, and you go back to the main motion.
So we got a second. All right, all in favor of the second amendment?
Aye.
First amendment. Aye. First amendment.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Sure.
Then you take an action on the main motion as amended.
And now we'll take a motion as a main one. And then. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Discussion and possible action regarding the purchase of the 2024 Chevrolet Silverado truck, 1,500 crew cab for the park department in the amount of $45,807.55.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am stepping in for Chris Acker, who cannot be here this evening. This is a budgeted item, and this company is a buy board. So the park says budgeted $45,000 for fiscal year 23-24 for a new fleet vehicle. The Parks Department is asking council to approve the purchase of the 2024 Chevrolet Silverado 1500 crew cab from Sampex 5-Star Chevrolet, which again, like I said, is a buy board number. They currently have one on stock for them. It's going to be $45,807.55. And like I said, the truck has been budgeted already, so we're asking for a motion to approve this evening.
Move to approve purchase of the 2024 Chevy Silverado 1500 crew cab truck for the Parks Department amount not to exceed $46,000. Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Discussion and possible action regarding the replacement of airport fuel system at the Lampasas Municipal Airport.
Mayor and Council, this item is placed on the agenda for your consideration on or about December 4. Through a normal daily inspection, staff noted some debris in the fuel. We did consult with the fuel vendor at the time, and at that time, or shortly thereafter, we made the decision to cease any sale of fuel from that tank. After further investigation, it was determined that the tank was at end of life, needed to be replaced. We have since done two things. One is we received a quotation from BGIS, and I believe Becky has that quotation at the dais, as well as we did talk to our TxDOT aviation planner, Ben Gregg in Austin. The TxDOT does have money for this project. My understanding from Chris is that it provided it's less than $100,000. It's a 90-10. So we'd be responsible for 10%. It would be reimbursable. We would pay up front and then receive the reimbursement for the 90% of what we pay. One thing that we're asking council's consideration of is the allowance or the latitude for staff to finish the procurement by policy and then move forward. In this circumstance, BGIS certainly is a qualified vendor, however, they do not have a viable contract. So if we could use this one as a marker, if anything came in underneath it, we could go with that vendor, provided they were qualified. If anything was above it, we would go back to BGIS. So you've got rather a long motion for your consideration. The one thing that I would request that you do is you do have an amount not to exceed $102,000. We would ask that if you did want to consider a motion in the affirmative, you would change that amount to $96,862.43. Or you could just say $97,000.
To move to direct staff solicit quotations provided for in city policy and state statute for the turnkey purchase and installation of a double wall 12,000 gallon avgas fuel tank and appurtenances, and to finalize and execute necessary documents to commence purchase and installation of the same in an amount not to exceed $97,000. Council further names the city manager as the city sponsor representative and directs the city manager to execute any and all documents required by TxDOT for project funding.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, council.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion of possible action regarding the approval of the budget amendment for the purchase of 4 vehicles for the police department that were approved in the prior fiscal year 2022, 2023 in the amount not to exceed $280,000.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This comes that we knew when we ordered the police vehicles that it was going to take some time for us to get it, and then they all come in at one time. So those were budgeted in prior years. We didn't have the money, they never came in, so we never paid for them. So that money that we had expensed for that basically went to the end of the budget to fund balance, as Philly had talked about earlier. So in order for this year for us to go ahead and pay for those now, they're not budgeted. But since we had it in prior years, I'll need a budget amendment at this one. For this fiscal year, not to exceed the $280,000 to pay for the 4 vehicles.
It's coming out of reserves.
I'm sorry?
Is it coming out of reserves?
Well, it'll come out of fund balance. We got about 2.3 million sitting in unassigned fund balance right now. So,
I'll make a motion to approve the budget amendment not to exceed $280,000.
Just to go ahead and beat this dead horse a little bit, this was budgeted in prior fiscal years.
it was, yes, I got the council approvals attached here from prior years, where it shows, where they were both approved, where they were all 4 approved, and amounts not to exceed the 110 on one and 170 on the other one.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes, sir, thank you, have a good day.
7.9, discussion of possible action regarding a memorandum of understanding between the Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service and the Texas A&M Public Response for the City of Lampasas.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. This is an awesome opportunity, not only for the city, but for staff. It's basically what it is during emergencies around the state of Texas, some of our guys have volunteered to go out with these teams and help restore either water services to cities or the wastewater plants. So the first step of this is a memorandum of understanding between Texas A&M Engineering Extension Service, Texas A&M Public Response Team, and the City of Lampasas.
I move to approve the memorandum of understanding and authorize the city manager to execute and approve all the agreements.
Second.
Any discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Discussion and possible action to deem the cemetery department 2004 pickup truck as surplus and dispose of as state law allows.
Councilman Williamson, this is just for you.
Thank you.
So, you'll see these two items on here. One is from the cemetery pickup truck and one's from the parks pickup. So the cemetery vehicle they have is a, 2004 pickup. It's currently got 82,000 miles on it. It currently does not run, has been out of service since 2022. Possible repairs may include the flywheel, or a starter, or the driver's side seat. The driver's side seat is unserviceable. So it has not been in service at all, and so we're just asking to go ahead and declare this as being surplus so we can go ahead and dispose of it as we're allowed to.
Motion to deem the cemetery department 2004 pickup truck as surplus and dispose of as state law allows.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you, Becky.
Discussion and possible action to deem Park Department 1999 Ford F-250 pickup truck as a surplus and disposed of as state law allows.
Again, this truck has done well for the Parks Department. It has a little over 146,000 miles on it, and it currently does not run as well. Even though it has been maintained for 2,000 miles, it's been aged. So the truck was driven daily until it was placed out of service in September of 2023, and it's possibly an electrical or ignition device that is what's wrong with it. So again, we're asking that we go ahead and deem this truck as surplus and dispose of the state law allows.
Make a motion to deem the Parks Department 1999 Ford F-250 pickup truck as surplus and dispose of as state law allows. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
7.12, discussion and possible action regarding the acknowledgement of concert in Courtyard Square Bandstand on April 7th, 2024, from 7 p.m. until midnight.
Mayor and Council, so community members have been working together for this plan of street concert on the Courtyard Square Bandstand. It's going to be Bob Willis and Texas Playboys, and they're expecting about 200 or 300 in attendance. And right now, again, it's being handled by Laughter. We'll be managing it. Some community members around town will also be assisting. We'll have the Citizen Patrol alumni out there as well as staff to help. But at this time, we're only considering closing the interior of the parking lot, so right outside the bandstand, and not doing the streets. However, if it comes to the point where we feel for safety that we need to go ahead and close off the street, we're just asking for a little bit of latitude for this, even. So we don't have to come back later.
I make a motion to acknowledge the concert on Courtyard Square Bandstand managed by LAPTA and provide latitude for staff and police department to close streets should the need arise due to increase in attendance to ensure safety.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
I had one question, sorry.
Okay.
That's April 7th, so that's the night before,
Yes.
Sunday before, and so are we still through text that I plan on closing cross streets? So-
4th Street. Just 4th Street's going to be closed that evening from our understanding. It'll be later in the evening on Sunday. I'm not sure exact timing on
Okay.
it, but it will be closed Sunday.
They were closing third.
Well, that's city. We're doing something a little different, but Techstar is actually closing from 190 to 4th Street. They're going to be closing that Sunday evening. But we will have barricades in place, of course, down Key, the first block off.
Actually, it's just the first block off of Key, so the cross street should still be available, for folks internally making those moves in downtown. They're not closing all of 4, just like Becky said, at 190, and then at Key, it'll be a block back at Key, just like we're doing all of our other barricades, closing those.
We need another motion. All in favor?
Abstain. Since I'm part of that, I'll vote for it.
7.13, discussion and possible action regarding the request for proposal for solid waste provider.
So in February of 2017, the city published a request for proposals for solid waste providers and received proposals from about 5 firms. At that time, we chose Waste Connections, which took the place of Waste Management, who was our current provider at that time. We did in 2020 extend it to 2020 for a 3-year term, which put it into 2023, and now we have our 5-year term that's going to expire next May of 2025. So at this time, we're asking for consideration to be able to use a request for proposals to go ahead and go out and look for alternatives for a solid waste provider beginning at that time. But we want to start now so they can get the fleet up, whatever materials, whatever equipment they need to be able to support us if we choose somebody other than who we already have.
I'd move to direct staff to seek qualified firms for proposals for solid waste providers, for service for Lampasas to remove the existing contract with us.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Need a motion to adjourn the executive session.
So moved.
All in favor?
Mayor and Council, I'd ask that Economic Development Director and the Assistant City Manager be included in executive session without objection.
And I'll step out during one of the items. I'll go say.